I'm Eric Santo, and today we're going to abuse a VCR.
Gone are the days of you going with your family to the local home video store. Gone are the days of you running through the endless selections of tapes, dancing around you, begging to be chosen. Gone are the days of asking your mom for the 8th week straight for the same Power Rangers tape. Gone are the days of that one section on your Baywatch tape being slightly worn out for some reason. Some say those days are happily forgotten, but not in this recording studio. We're going to keep that nostalgia palace alive, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. So let's get some popcorn and dive right in. There's a few videos out there that already cover this topic, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach with this video and try to bring something new to the conversation. The difference lies in how audio is being recorded to the VHS tape. So there's actually two methods for recording audio onto VHS tape. Hold on. Getting a call. Hello?
Tell them to like and subscribe.
No, we talked about this.
Tell
No,
them
I'm
to
not.
like and subscribe.
No, the video barely even started. I'm not gonna do that.
You need to tell them to like and subscribe.
No.
It's very important.
Alright.
Just do it.
Okay, I will. All right, bye.
Tell them to like and...
Anyway, like I was saying, there's two different methods for recording audio onto VHS tape. And depending on what type of VCR you own, you're gonna get drastically different results. To explain the differences, I'm going to have to get a little down and dirty and, dare I say, a little nerdy into the details. So if you don't care about the little nitpicky technical details here and you just want to hear me print some mixes down straight to the VHS tape, I'll put a timestamp in the comment section and you can just skip right to that part. But for all you people who want to stick around and go through all those nerdy little details, let's open up one of these sons of bitches and see what's going on inside. Okay, so now we are looking at the inside of a VCR. On the right hand, we got all the boring business we don't care about. And on the center here, we have the tape transport control and the heads. Let's zoom in here now. So there's only really two things I want to point out here. We have the video drum here, and we have the audio and sync head right here. Now, the audio and sync head is going to look very similar to any tape head you'd see on any tape recorder that you're used to. This video drum head is much different. Let's get a tape loaded in here so we can get a better look of how it works. Alright, so we're loading a tape in. Let's press play here. Alright, so this drum is rotating at about 1800 RPMs. That is very quick. The method in which this video drum reads and writes signals onto the tape is called the vertical helical scan. The acronyms there are no coincidence. There is some debate whether or not VHS stood for Video Home System, but we don't have time for that gossip today. This video drum system allows for a lot more information to be stored onto the tape. Let's go to a diagram of how the information is stored on this tape to better understand how this is utilized. Okay, so we are now looking at a really roughly drawn diagram of VHS tape. VHS tape, as you can see here, is a 1/2 inch wide. Also, don't touch it like I just did. Traditionally, the top band here is for the left and right audio channels. The bottom here is for the synchronization track that allows the VCR to align to the VHS tape. And these diagonal tracks here is how the vertical helical scan system writes onto the tape. What makes this method so important is because the video drum is scanning the tape in this method, it effectively extends the useful length of the tape. And by increasing the useful length of the tape, you can also increase tape speed. When this tape is traveling across the transport system, it's only traveling at 1.313 inches per second. That's very slow for a tape machine. But utilizing this VHS method, it's able to get up to 191.34 inches per second with this system. You are increasing the tape speed 145 times with this method. You're able to cram 145 times more information per second of playback with this system. This is extremely useful. And what makes hi-fi systems in stereo so important is that this video drum can also be utilized for audio. So now, instead of your audio track being read through this audio tape head here at 1.313 inches per second, it's actually being read at 191.34 inches per second. That's very quick. You're able to store a lot of information this way. The vertical helical scan system allows for a full range frequency response from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. It also allows you to have a dynamic range of 90 dB. We are approaching CD level quality here, and some say pretty much at the same level of CD quality. Now you may be wondering, wow, CD level quality? Mario, if that's the case, why don't people print their mixes all the time down to VHS? Well, when this technology came out, home recordists definitely did. However, it didn't really stand the test of time, and this is mainly due to one issue. This issue being tape degradation. VHS tapes degrade very quickly, and this is going to be apparent to anyone over the age of 25 who's owned a VCR. All your favorite VHS tapes that you love all get really fuzzy, and the ones that you barely play still have a relatively clear picture.
Let's go back to looking inside the VCR now.
Something really important to note here is that the signal that's imprinted onto the tape using this method is different than your standard audio head tape signal. The signal in this case is actually a frequency modulated signal, just like you'd see in your FM radio, or it's the same way the sound is transmitted on your old TV tube set with the rabbit ears. I don't think that's going to make much of a difference. If I had to guess, I think that slightly degrades the audio signal by doing that. However, the increased tape speed is going to greatly outweigh anything lost from transmitting the signal with FM versus the linear amplification method of the regular tape head. So every video I've watched on this topic stops here and only talks about the hi-fi audio applications, but I want to go into the lo-fi audio applications as well on a VHS tape. Although the tape width is a ½ an inch wide, when you're utilizing the low fidelity audio tracks on this VHS tape, you're only relegated to less than a 32nd of an inch for these left and right audio tracks. That's extremely narrow. And the tape width is extremely important fidelity of recording. That's why a reel-to-reel is going to sound a lot better than, say, a cassette recording. I am fully expecting the audio track on this VHS tape to sound filthy, and I am excited for it. As I mentioned before, this tape transport system is only pulling the tape at 1.313 inches per second at standard playback speed. So that means this tape is passing this audio head at that slow of a speed. This, in combination with the very narrow track width for the audio tracks, is going to be
nasty.
The frequency response at this tape speed is only 100 hertz to 10k kilohertz. That's borderline unacceptable by modern standards, or pretty much any standards. It gets even worse when you put this VCR in the super long play speed. The tape speed is now going to be a third of what it was. So you're going from 1.313 to about 0.44 inches per second. The playback response is going to be so ugly, but we're going to love it. It's pretty easy to tell if your VCR is capable of hi-fi recording because it will say it right on the machine as such. The good news is that if you have one of these hi-fi VCRs, you're able to record both in the hi-fi method as well as the lo-fi method. Whereas if your VCR is not capable of hi-fi audio, you're only get one option, and it's the lo-fi option. Okay, so now we know all the technical details about how audio is recorded onto VHS tapes. Let's get to the testing. I want to compare 4 different options for VHS recording. The first is going to be standard playback speed, hi-fi audio. Then we're going to do standard play speed, lo-fi audio. Then we're going to go to super long playback speed at hi-fi audio. And we're going to do the same super long playback speed at lo-fi audio option. We're also going to have 2 control tracks to compare to. The first control track is just going to be the same mixdown ripped straight into my computer. And then the second control is going to be the same mixdown ripped to a cassette using my cassette player here. And we're basically just going to use those to compare the VHS mixes and just kind of get some reference to what our ears are used to. We're going to run through a whole song for this demonstration, and the song I picked, I specifically chose it because it is a very gritty song. I had the preamps really cranked when I was recording it, and it's dirty, and that's kind of what I'm going for the sound. I mean, you know, all the other VHS audio recording videos I've watched are all going for, like, really pristine audio quality, but that's so boring. I mean, like, there's no other reason to record a VCR or to VHS tapes in today's world other than just to have some fun, get some grit, really push the limits to see where we're going here. And also, when I was doing the mix downs onto the VHS tapes for these tests, I was really pushing the input gain here. I wanted to see how well the VHS tape could withstand those high levels of audio volume. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to the tests. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope that gave a good comparison between the different options with your VCR player. I was actually really surprised that I liked the super long playback speed at the hi-fi option. In my opinion, there was very little difference between the standard playback speed at the hi-fi option and the super long playback speed for the hi-fi option. And to me, the super long playback speed slightly degraded the signal just enough where it just had that, like, roughness to it, that garageness that if you watch any of my videos, you know I just love, you know, disgusting ass sound. So it's kind of obviously up to personal opinion. So I would love to hear what you guys think, which one you guys liked best, and if you thought it all sounded like crap, let me know. Another takeaway is that at the hi-fi settings, the quality was pretty good. And this is even in consideration with my terribly degraded tapes. And I'm very curious, if I were to buy a new old stock blank VHS tape, if I were to do the same test, how great the fidelity would be for the mixdown. And I think this would be a great tool for stereo bounce downs. And I don't think I'll be using this for mixdowns anytime soon. You know, I have the reel-to-reel over here, or I have the cassette here. The VHS is really probably just going to be relegated for me just having fun and really just, like, pushing limits of songs, if anything. So, yeah. Some other important takeaways that are coming to mind. For the lo-fi options, the high end is significantly reduced. And especially with the super long playback mode, it's downright unusable in my opinion. Maybe if you're like a filmmaker and you want some really interesting sound, or maybe, it's a short section of a song where you just want some like crazy flavor, like like some people have like choruses that sound like it's through a telephone or something, something weird like that. Maybe you could utilize something like that. And with all these types of tests that I do in these videos, the main important thing is just to experiment. And the more you experiment with your equipment and experiment with gain staging and pushing equipment, you get more familiar with how you could shape sound. And this might not seem like something you can apply to every song, but maybe you have one song one day that you're producing for someone, and you're like, oh, you know what? There was that one time I really pushed that VCR and I got a really cool sound that I liked, and you might use it. You never know. All this stuff you got to tuck away somewhere deep inside in your toolbox that maybe one day you pull out in case you need it. Okay, so please go out and experiment and just start just destroying shit and just ripping tapes up and just making fun stuff happen. If you are looking to replicate recording on VHS like I'm doing today in this video for yourself, you need to be very careful with the VHS tapes you are using for your tests, because I had about 10 or so that I was using and cycling through trying to find the best one, and each tape had wildly different results. Sometimes the left audio channel was a little weaker than the right channel. Sometimes it wouldn't rewind in the machine. Other times the tape would stick. Sometimes the tape would rip. So many issues. So if you could get a new old stock tape, if you're going to do something like this, I'd highly recommend it. This is especially true with consumer-grade VHS tapes. With the prosumer stuff, you had better performance. The Mylar was a little thicker and could handle the abuse a lot more. But most people don't have that, and especially in today's age of 2022, you're not getting prosumer VHS tapes anywhere for any reasonable price. So most people are only going to have consumer-based tapes that are, at this point, at least 20 years old. I think the tapes that I've been recording on are from the late 80s, so we're talking about a really long time here, and the tape quality is severely diminished. There was also something interesting that I noticed when I was ripping all these mixes into my computer through Audacity. Now, the song starts off with a guitar-only intro, and then the full band kicks in. And, the guitar intro is a softer audio volume than the rest of the song when the full band kicks in, and this is evident by the raw control track. And I'll show that waveform here. And for all the hi-fi options, this stayed true where the intro guitar section is lower than the rest of the mix. But if you look at the lo-fi options, you can see this is a different story. As you can see here, the guitar-only intros actually appear louder than the rest of the mix. What this tells me is that when the full band kicks in, it's actually throwing the tape into saturation and probably to some extent limiting the audio signal. And this is evident by the comparison between the peaks of both the guitar-only section and the full band section. As you can see here, they're pretty much at the same level. So, as I was saying, I think when the full band kicks in, it's just too much signal for the VHS tape to handle, and it's just compressing that signal. Now, you could just say, well, why didn't you decrease the audio level? This way, the guitar-only intro is a little quieter, and then when the full band kicks in, it's not being saturated. Well, if I would have done that, then the guitar-only intro would have been buried by a insane amount of hiss. So I kind of had to compromise somewhere. I think the only solution to this problem would be to run the whole mix through some pretty heavy compression before it ever hits the VHS tape. And for this video, I didn't want to do that because I wanted all the mix sounds to have the same parameters. This way the comparison was, as accurate as possible. When I first had the idea for this video, I went out and bought this VCR specifically because it has an audio meter built in. And I thought this was going to be so useful for printing down mixes. It's going to look so good on the video. Well, it turns out it's not really necessary. I found that when I was recording onto this VCR without any indication of the audio level going into it, is that it's not really necessary. I found the the usable headroom for putting the signal onto the tape is pretty broad, and I think there must be some compression or limiting function built into the VCR that kind of takes care of it. And I tried different levels, and it went from being way too low and full of hiss to being sounding good for a really long range, and then only when I pushed it extremely high did I get results that were unusable. Not only that, this machine doesn't work right. And I'm going to play a couple of examples right now of what would happen when I would try to play back the signals I recorded onto the tape. So here's an example of that right now. As you can hear, the speed is just fluctuating all over the place. And this happened like 75% of the time. 25% of the time, the recording would play back at a constant speed, but either slightly slow or slightly fast. And I actually had a mix that I think sounded really good with this method, and it's slightly slowed down, but I still think it sounded really good. And this is not hi-fi capable. It's just this is just the lo-fi method, and I'll play an excerpt of that now. Another really fun thing you could do with a VCR or a cassette tape or anything basically with a spinning reel. So now we're looking on the underside of the VCR, and as you can see, everything is spinning right now. This is how the machine spins the reels on the tape. Pretty self-explanatory. Well, if you manually slow down this and play with this rubber band, you could get some really neat effects. I'll play some excerpts of and examples of what I'm talking about, but you could get really fun effects, and on one of my upcoming songs I actually use this effect, and maybe I'll put an example of that where I use this on a cassette tape. So yeah, just endless fun with these machines, All in all, I had a lot of fun today. I hope I inspired you to go in your basement and get the VCR that's collecting dust down there. Have some fun. Like I said, even if you don't use this for a song or whatever the case is, it's always good to experiment and get better with your tools and learn how your compressor works when you're running it into the VCR, and what type of songs are better suited for the VCR. There's so many factors here. As always, please give me your feedback. If you think my videos are trash, I'm always open to critique. And I will see you next time. If you have any recommendations for videos, please let me know. Thank you. Good night. Abuse a VCR. Yeah, that's broken. I think I went too far.